Oh, I just can't wait to be king. That was one of the most popular songs in the movie Lion King. Perhaps you've seen it, probably maybe 100 times, maybe more, I don't know. But I just can't wait to be king. And this is a song that was sung by the young lion cub Simba. He's on his way to go see the elephant graveyard. And so it was beyond the boundary set forth by his dad, who was Mufasa, who was the king, right? And so he's on his way to the elephant graveyard, and he breaks out in song. And why does he break out in this song? As part of it is he's excited that one day he's going to be king, right? And he's going to be, make all the rules, and everybody has to do what he says. And so he's excited about that, but also he wants it to be king almost right now. Why? Because his dad has said, listen, don't go beyond this boundary, and he wants to go to this elephant graveyard that's beyond the boundary. And so he doesn't really want to obey his dad, at least in this instance. He doesn't want to obey him, listen to him. He wants to go and do what he wants to do, and he just can't wait for that moment where he is the king. He can just do whatever he wants, right? And so he breaks out in song. And if you know, if you've seen the movie, you know it doesn't work out very well for him. Him going to the elephant graveyard was a trap, and thankfully his dad was there to save him from that trap. And so whenever we don't listen to our parents, it usually doesn't work out very well, does it? And so, but he breaks out in this song, I just can't wait to be king. And there's something about this song that just resonates with every kid. And I think it's because there's something deep down inside of all of us that wants to be free from authority. We want to be our own king. We want to do whatever we want. And every kid's dream is to what? To be free from authority so that they can just do whatever they want. They can say whatever they want. They can eat whatever they want. Do whatever they want, whenever they want, right? Just be free from that authority. And we have this desire in all of us because of our sin nature. Because of our sin nature, we have a natural resistance to authority. And so this is true of every single kid that is ever born. And so when children come into the world, our children, they are born as self-appointed little kings and queens, aren't they? So what do we do about that? Moms, dads, grandparents, anybody that's trying to raise kids, what do we do about that? Well, that's why we're doing this series, and it's because parenting is difficult, isn't it? Parenting is hard. In fact, it seems like in the last 15 to 20 years, it's gotten a whole lot harder. With the rise of the internet, rise of social media, and you've got cultural upheaval, political upheaval, all the things that's going on, it just seems like it's just so much more difficult today than what it was maybe 20, 30, 40 years ago. There's just so many more obstacles, so many more what I call landmines in culture that can trip up our children. And so what can we do to help with this issue? And so the question is all right, so kids are naturally born with a rebellious heart, so what do we do about that? And so today what we're going to talk about, and really it's kind of the answer to this problem, is that we need to teach kids to honor authority. We need to teach kids to honor authority. And so every fight that you've had with your kids, whether it's, over what time to go to bed, what they're going to wear, what they're going to eat for dinner, or what they're going to watch on TV or not watch on TV, so all of these fights, it's really not about those issues, but really the battle is over something that's happening in their heart. It's a heart issue. And this battle is deciding is who's going to lead, who's going to decide how the kid is going to live. Is it mom and dad, or is the kid going to decide? Because here's the truth, is that kids desire self-rule. They seek it. And they will rule if you let them. They will take over. They will rule the roost. Y'all have heard that phrase? They will take over and they will rule if you let them. So when kids come into the world, they need to know that they've entered into a world of authority. And they are not it. They have to understand that at an early age. So we must teach kids to honor authority. Now, I think that there's some confusion maybe in our culture about authority. Because we look at authority and we naturally kind of think negative about it. We don't like it when people tell us what to do. And so I think in our society, we see freedom as having no authority, where we can just do whatever we want, whenever we want it. That's true freedom. However, when you look at human history, when you look at Scripture, especially in the Old Testament, and you see societies where there wasn't really an authority and everybody just kind of did what they thought was right, everybody did whatever they want whenever they wanted it, what happened? Chaos and death broke out. So authority done properly is actually good. Authority actually preserves life, and that's really kind of the purpose behind authority. And so moms and dads, we have to understand that our authority comes from God. Listen to what the Apostle Paul says in 2 Corinthians 5:15. He says, "And he died for all, so that who live should no longer live for themselves, for the one who died for them was raised." And so this is a very interesting passage. It's really quite profound, actually, when you think about it. Because what does it say? That one of the reasons Jesus came and he died on the cross for us was because we were not living for God. We were not living for Christ. We were living for who? For ourselves. And so before we become a Christian, we have self-appointed ourselves as king of the world, or at least our world, our little bubble, right? And we've displaced God. We've pushed God to the side, and we put ourselves on His throne where we think we're king. And so Jesus came and He died so that we would submit to His authority. And so when we become a Christian, when we become a believer, we're actually submitting ourselves underneath Christ's authority. And we live for Him, and we're not capable of living for Him. And so mom and dad, no matter how great of a parent you are, no matter what tone of voice you use, no matter what your physical size is, no matter what threats you throw out to your children, the fact is the fact that only Jesus can change their heart. And so we have to understand that parents represent God to their children. And so we want to lead our children to the Lord, because ultimately He is the one that's going to change our children's heart. He's the one that can remove their rebellious attitude. Only He can do that. So we represent God to our children, and this is important to recognize because it's so easy for us to misuse our authority, for us to abuse our authority, for us to maybe out of laziness, maybe out of anger, you're angry with your kids because they're just not listening, they're not obeying, out of frustration, whatever it is, we can abuse our authority. And when we do that, what are we doing? We're actually reinforcing the rebellious heart, the rebellious nature that they have. And so it's so important that we understand that, hey, we're actually representing God to our kids. And so therefore we should act in such a way, and we should use our authority in such a way that will help lead them to God and not actually reinforce the rebellious nature that is in their heart. So we have to teach kids to honor authority. And so listen to what Paul says in Ephesians chapter 6, and I think this is really, it's a very common passage, but I think it's very interesting. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1, it says, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, because this is right." So let's pause there for a second. So this is very clearly, it's assumed here that who has the authority in the home over the child? It's mom and dad. Mom and dad have an authority that has been given to them by God to teach and train the parents. And the child is to do what? The child is to obey their parents, because when they obey their parents, in effect, what are they doing? They are obeying God. And so in many ways, parents are the invisible representation of God in the home. And so if we want our children to grow up and to love the Lord, the way mom and dad we act is very, very important. Verse 2, it says, "Honor your father and mother." And so let's pause there. We're going to get to the rest of it in just a second. So here's the command: is children are to obey their parents, but then they are also to honor their father and mother. And so this is where honor begins. And so really, let's talk about this for a second. There's a difference between honor and obedience. Obedience is the outcome. It's the action, right? So a child can be obedient, but still have a rebellious heart. Like they can do it and obey you and still just be all tore up inside because they wanted to do X, Y, Z, and you won't let them do X, Y, Z. And so they're just mad and they're upset in their heart. But yet they obeyed because they know they'll be punished. They know the consequences. So they obey. But honoring is a different level. It takes it deeper. It takes it to the heart level. So it's not just correcting behavior, but it takes it to the heart to say, okay, son and daughter, I'm going to teach you and I'm going to train you to honor your parents. And when you teach them to honor parents, the natural outcome is going to be obedience. So honor is a step further. Honor strikes at the heart. And so that's why we want to teach kids not just to obey, but to honor authority. But it starts at home. It starts with mom and dad, because that is the foundational relationship between a parent and a child, is that relationship. And so as soon as they enter into the world, you have to immediately begin to start teaching and training them that they need to honor mom and dad. Children must learn to honor their parents, and it starts soon as they're born, because, like I said, they seek self-rule. They will take over and they will rule the roost if you let them, but you have to teach them at an early age that no, mom and dad are in charge. Your job is to honor us. Honor mom and dad, and it starts early. And how that works is if you do not teach your children to honor you as mom and dad, when they grow up and they are married, they will grow up and they will not honor their spouse. They will not honor family members. They will struggle in relationships because they have not been taught to honor authority. They may struggle in school. They may struggle in other aspects of their life because that primary relationship between mom and dad, parents and child, has not been established that they are to submit or they are to honor their authority. So it starts at home and then it bleeds over into everything else. So we must teach kids to honor their parents. We also must not tolerate disrespect or dishonor. And this is a big thing, especially dads for a moment. We should never, ever let our children disrespect mom. Never let that happen. Never let them disrespect mom in the home. And this is something that as dads, I think that we have to take personally, say, you know what, I'm going to make sure that my children honor mom. Because if they honor mom, most likely they're going to end up honoring you, and they're going to honor mom and dad together. But this is something that the dad has to set, because oftentimes what happens in the home is that mom's doing most of the parenting. They're doing a lot of the details, right? And no, you don't need to watch this. You need to go fold your clothes. You need to go clean up your room. And they're like, no, I don't want to fold my clothes. I don't want to put up the dishes. I don't want to clean up my room. I don't want to do this. And so they're engaged with this battle all day long. But Dad, if you can come behind them and reinforce that, no, son and daughter, you are to honor your mother and your father, it will make a big difference in their life. So you cannot tolerate disrespect. Do not let your children disrespect the other spouse, whether it's the mother or father. Just don't let it happen. And you got to set that precedent early in life. And if you can do it when they're young, set that precedent, it's going to be easier and not harder when they're older. But if you kind of let it go when they're younger, by the time they're a teenager, they're 15, 16, 17 years old, and they've had an entire lifetime of just mouthing off to mom and dad, well, it's only going to get worse. You're not going to stop it when they're 15, 16, 17 years old. So you got to start young, and you got to say, you know what? We're not going to tolerate disrespect in the home. We're going to draw a line. And so that kids will know, hey, if I get disrespectful, I may not want to do something, but if I get disrespectful, punishment's coming. There's going to be consequences. And they should know, hey, you don't disrespect mom. Because if you disrespect mom, here comes dad, because he's coming after me. Because I've crossed the line. And so if we can train that, put that in our kids' mind early on in life, it will set them up to honor all authority as they grow up and as they get older. We also should adopt honor as a family value. We should adopt honor as a family value. And honor, really just isn't for kids. It says, kids are to honor their mother and father, but really honor should be something that the whole family is doing and something that we should adopt together. Listen to what Romans 12:10 says. It says, love one another deeply as brothers and sisters. Take the lead in honoring one another. So here Paul is talking about, or he's using this word love and honor kind of interchangeably, isn't he? In fact, he says, listen, in a world that struggles to love, in a world that struggles to show honor to one another, you take the lead. So in your home, mom and dad, you take the lead in what it means to show honor. As a family, seek to show honor to each other, but then also to others outside the home. So adopt it as a family value. And here's why honor is such a big deal, why it's something that we should adopt. And it's because it comes really from God. And honor is simply, it's recognizing that every single person is highly valuable to God. And we've talked about this before in the past, that we are all made in the image of God. And so every single person that is alive is highly valuable to God. And so when we treat people with honor, we're recognizing this person is highly valuable because they are made in the image of God. They bear God's mark, His image. And so I'm going to treat people with honor. I'm going to treat people with respect because I love God and I recognize what He has done in His creation. And so if we can do this as a family, you lead and you guide your family to do this, to treat every single person as if they are made in the image of God, you will begin to honor them. And when you begin to do that, you begin to make an impact on the people that you come into contact with. And over time, it will have a profound impact. But it starts at home, and it starts with mom and dad setting this as kind of a family value to say, you know what, we're going to honor each other. Yes, there's going to be times when we mess up, but we're going to honor each other, and we're going to teach our kids to honor one another, especially those who are in authority. So when they go off to school, when they're on the ball field and they have a coach and they're asked to do something they don't want to do, they're going to honor the wishes of those who are in charge. Why? Because you've taught them and you've trained them and you've set up a value at home that you honor one another, especially those who are in charge, those who are in authority. And this is a key issue that I think is missing so much in our society today. And I think it's the church's responsibility, believers, to say, you know what, we're going to live out these biblical principles that we find in God's Word, because it will help us reach the world, and they'll notice, hey, there's something different. It's like, well, just read your Bible, and we follow God, and we listen to God, and we want to live out His Word. And this is what happens as we honor people. We show love to people, and we teach and train our kids to show authority, or to honor authority. So verse 2 in Ephesians 6, it says, honor your father and your mother, which is the first commandment, with a promise, so that it may go well with you and that you may have a long life in the land. And so this is a reference to the fifth command of the Ten Commandments. And it comes with a promise. He says that things will go well with you. And it's like, if you're a mom and dad, well, yeah, things are going to go well for my son or daughter, with my kids, when they're obedient, when they listen and when they obey and they're honoring me. Yes, things are just naturally going to go better because they're not getting in trouble. I don't know any kid that's like, oh, I want to get in trouble. I mean, that doesn't make sense. But if you can teach them to honor and train them, yes, things are going to go smoother in the home. Things are going to go well with them. They're going to be more likely to succeed in life. Why? Because they've learned to honor authority. And then it also says that they will live long in the land. Now, obviously, this is talking to the Israelites, but I believe that there is still a promise today for children, that children, when they honor and they obey their parents, that they will live longer than those who do not obey their parents and do not honor their parents. It's because parents, we naturally love and we care for our kids, and so we set boundaries, just like Mufasa set a boundary for Simba, right? We set boundaries for our kids because we care about them. We care about their well-being. And a lot of rules we set is because we want to protect them from danger. And so when kids listen to us and they follow those rules, what happens? Well, they're not put in danger. They don't get hurt because they're listening and they're following our rules. So here's kind of an extreme example of what I'm talking about. So when I was in the 9th grade, There was a kid at our high school. He lived on a very busy road, and he loved to ride his bike. And so he's 14, 15 years old. You know, he probably thought, hey, I've got good control of my bike. I'm really good at riding a bike. You know, I can go out on the road. But his parents would tell him over and over and over, you cannot ride your bike in the road. It's just a busy, busy road. And so they lived just over a hill. So it's almost like a blind driveway. Y'all know what I'm talking about? You get over the hill and it's like there's a driveway right there and you didn't see it till you're just beyond the hill. So it's kind of a blind driveway, and his parents told him over and over and over, don't go out on the road. Well, one day he was riding his bike, and guess what he did? He went out on the road. And a big utility truck came over and ran him over, and he died. He was like 14, 15 years old. And so, tragic. But had he listened to mom and dad, had he honored their wishes and understood that they weren't just being mean, but it was for his protection, he may still be alive today. And so, yes, this comes with a promise that if kids honor and they obey mom and dad, that guess what? The amount of chances that they're going to come into contact with a situation like that are going to be drastically reduced. Now, accidents are going to happen, bad things are going to happen that are out of our control. But obeying mom and dad is something that is completely within a child's control. And so we have to teach and train not just to obey, but teach them to honor as well, because that will go to the heart. And here's the interesting thing about honor. When we teach honor, is you don't have to set forth as many rules, because they will naturally just do what they know that you want. And so you don't have to give a rule for every single thing, so you can cut back on the amount of rules that you have to give your kids, because they will honor your wishes and they know what you want. And so it's just an important thing that we have to teach our children, is that they have to honor authority, and it starts at the home. So what do we do when kids mess up? They're going to cross the line. They're not going to honor authority. They're going to disobey at times, and it's time to punish. Well, listen to Hebrews 12:11. It says, no discipline seems enjoyable at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. So discipline is something that parents, we have to do. We have to discipline our kids. And what does the Scripture promise if we do? That in the future, it will do what? It will yield a fruitful harvest, that it will pay off. Now, when your kids are younger, you may not necessarily see the fruit right away. It may take a decade. It may take a couple of decades. You may not see the fruit of your labors till, they're in their 20s or 30s, But the point is that the Scripture says you have to discipline your kids, and you have to teach them to honor authority. And so when they don't do that, you have to come alongside and you have to correct them. You have to discipline them so that they will honor authority. So here are just a few things that I want to give you, just some practical things to think about when it comes to discipline. And the first thing is don't discipline out of anger. And this is so easy to break, because kids, they can just drive us crazy sometimes. It's like, I've told you 15 million times not to do X, Y, Z. And what did they just do? X, Y, Z. They just did exactly what you told them not to do. And it can just make us angry. And in that anger, we can over-punish. We can over-discipline out of anger. And so what ends up happening when we do that, it actually instills a greater amount of rebellion in their heart, because they see that you're angry, and that's all they see. That's all they feel is the angry. They don't necessarily feel love. They just see and they feel the anger. So try not to discipline out of anger. The second thing is make sure the punishment fits the crime. Make sure the punishment fits the crime. And so this works both ways. You can under-punish and you can over-punish. Sometimes I think we're living in a culture where we tend to under-punish our kids. And so what happens when we under-punish? Well, kids are like, oh, I got away with that. I just got a little slap on the hand, and hey, that's no big deal. I can take that. And so they're going to do it again, whatever it is. And so the punishment must fit the crime. But we can over-punish as well, and we can be over the top. So we got to make sure that whatever it is that they did, their punishment, whatever the discipline is, it fits the crime. And this takes wisdom. Sometimes it takes talking with your spouse, is to say, okay, how do we deal with this situation, this issue? Because a lot of times, this is how it works in our house, and I don't know about you, but we tend to balance each other out. One of us wants to over-punish and really hand it to them. The other one's like, no, you need to calm down a little bit. So talk to your spouse before you begin to discipline, because sometimes we need to balance each other out. But make sure the punishment fits the crime. We also need to understand that every child is different. Every child is different. We can't discipline each kid the same way, because every kid has a different personality. Every kid has different strengths and weaknesses. One kid, you just give them the look. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Every parent has the look, and they just break down into pieces. Right? You give them the look like, hey, you better not do that anymore. One kid will break down into pieces. The other kid, you give them the look, and they give you a look right back. Right? They're going to fight you on it. So every kid is different, and it takes different ways to teach and train each kid. They're completely different. And so a lot of times kids will say, hey, you like this kid more than the other. It's like, no, you got to understand, y'all are very different people. You have different personalities. And so it takes different response to each kid. So we have to understand every child is different. It's not a cookie cutter. I can't come up here and say, all right, when your child does this, this is what you need to do. When your child does this, this is what you need to do. All I can do is try to give you some general principles, because every home, every child is unique and different. And it takes a different approach for every kid. So every child is different. Fourth is we need to help kids understand that actions have consequences. And this is something not all kids, especially younger kids, realize, that when they do bad things tend to happen, right? They need to understand that every action, whether it's good or bad, is going to have a set of consequences behind it. And it's our job as parents is to help them understand that typically when you do good things, when you honor authority, and when you obey your parents, when you obey school teachers, when you obey coaches, when you just honor authority in general, good things usually happen. And when you don't, bad things usually happen. And so we have to teach and train our kids and help them understand that actions have consequences. But kids, not all kids, understand this. They don't realize that. So we have to tell them, we have to teach them that they have consequences. Fifth thing is discipline with the goal of redemption and restoration. Discipline with the goal of redemption and restoration. So what do I mean by that? Well, discipline with the goal of redemption, in that when your child is disrespectful, when they break that line and they were disobedient, they didn't honor you, they've broken trust, right? So you have to let them know, here's how you can regain my trust. Here's your path to redemption. This is what you need to do. Instead of them just thinking and feeling, oh man, my parents don't love me anymore. That I can never regain their trust, that they're so deep in punishment that they can never get out of it. Now, for a moment that may be a good thing, but we have to show them a path to redemption, that they can regain that trust. It may be a long path. It may take a long time depending on what they've done, especially if they're older, middle school, high school, and they've done some bad things. They got to have a path to redemption, even if it's a long path, to regain your trust. And when we do that, we're actually going to reinforce what Christ has done for us on the cross and help them understand that, listen, we've all sinned. None of us deserve heaven. None of us deserve to have a relationship with Jesus Christ, but yet while we were yet sinners, what did Christ do? He came and He died on the cross for us, and He offered us redemption. So when our kids mess up, this is actually a prime opportunity to help teach them what redemption means and what Christ has done for us. And restoration, because when they've messed up, they've broken a relationship, right? Whether it's yours or somebody else's. And so to help restore that relationship, that trust that was broken, help restore that. So when it comes to discipline, one of the goals is to teach redemption and restoration, to help restore them and help redeem them to that level of relationship that you had before. And so that should be the goal of discipline. And that's why God disciplines us as His children, is because we've strayed off the path. And what does He want us to do? He wants us to get back on the path of loving Him and following Him every single day. And so as a representative of God, this is what we want to do for our children, isn't it? When they stray off the path, we want to bring them back on the path. And we have to do that through discipline, through correction. Because we want our children to love the Lord, don't we? We don't want them to stray off the path and stay off the path. We want them to love the Lord with all of their heart, with all of their soul, and with all of their might. And we have to be realistic, and we have to know and understand that they're going to mess up. They're going to stray off the path, sometimes way off the path. And we've got to be there for them to help bring them back. Even if it takes a long time, we've got to be there for them to help bring them back onto the path of loving God, following God with all of their heart, with all of their soul, with all of their might. So ultimately, honor is a heart issue. Honor is the solution to help fighting against that rebellious heart, that rebellious nature that's in all of us. And so if you can remember back to when you're a kid, it will actually, I think, will help you parent your children, because you'll know and understand what's going on in their heart and their mind. I remember what it was like when I was a kid, and I'm sneaking this and I'm sneaking that, and I'm trying to get around the rules. And, I remember what it was like to be a kid, even though every day it gets farther and farther away. I still try to remember what it was like to be a kid. And it will help us understand as a parent what they're going through and what they're thinking, and to teach them that they have to honor authority. Honor authority, and this is such a big deal. If we're going to parent today and we're going to navigate the landmines, because we can't be there every single moment of every single day for our kids, but if we can teach them to honor authority, it will follow them wherever they go. Whether it's at school, the ball field, or when they grow up and they have a job and they have bosses and they have this and that, no matter where we go, we're always going to have some sort of authority. So if we can teach them to honor authority, it will go well for them wherever they go. Even if it takes, seeing fruit till they're in their 20s or 30s, it will go well for them. And they will live long in the land, as Paul says, and as Moses wrote in Exodus. It will go well for them. So think about these things. Think about honor, and think about how you can honor each other in your home. Go home today and think about and talk to your spouse. How can we adopt honor as a family value? And how can we begin to teach and train our kids to honor authority? Let's pray.